Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Coach Adam's Bikini TV. We have a whole lot happening this weekend. It was a crazy weekend, packed full of stories, packed full of wins. Ashley Kaltwasser wins the Nevada State, defending her Las Vegas area and also her Nevada State championship of the prior year. We have Krista Bellina winning the Miami show, stamping her ticket to the Olympia, and Ellie also qualifying for the Olympia, which is the 7th time she's done that in a row. Amazing, amazing feat by Ellie. So one of the people that you should be watching that you might not know you should be watching right there. But there's also some great stories, which is really exciting about this weekend, which is what I really loved about this weekend. One of the bigger stories is Jessica taking second in Nevada State, beating out Rihanna when she had a much lower placing just recently before that against Rihanna. Savannah slipping placings, coming from a win all the way down out of the first call out at her next show, showing you how volatile Bikini can be. Is this a sign of what things are to come, or is this just a bad showing for her? Valeria getting a first call out and moving her way up the ranks in the American market. Always done very good overseas. What does she need to do to really do well in the American market? We had a comeback from Maya, which was an amazing showing for her. Huge transformation. Really great seeing her back on stage again. And we have a follow-up with Laura at her second show of the year. We're going to go ahead and assess her physique and see if my earlier predictions were right about her physique and if she's maximizing that potential. We also have 2 shows this weekend, the DC Pro and the Mile High Pro. Who are the favorites going into that one? We have Marissa Wu stepping back on stage. Does she have enough? Will she bring enough to the DC to take that show? Oh my gosh, it's so much this time. It's like gonna be like so much work. Why do we do these every week? So much work. So first, let's jump right into Krista Bellina and her winning in Miami. Congrats to you, Krista Bellina. Let's go ahead and look at the pictures and look at the adjustments that she may have made going into this show. So first off, looking at some of the details that I mentioned before. The last show, she was hiding her belly button with her hand placement. She was right on top of her belly button if you look at those pictures. And now she's pulled it back a little bit. It makes a big difference on her overall look. I think it looks a little bit less strong. I think it looks more correct. I still think this hand should be lower on her core. I don't like the fist on for someone who's as muscular as her. I think it makes more sense to be a little more dainty with like an open hand on that upper strap. I don't think her elbow position needs to be that high for her, how much shoulder she has. Now, if she didn't have those shoulders, I would say, yeah, put your elbow position a little bit higher, make your shoulders look like they're bigger than they are. But when you have someone like this, who's this muscular, who's pushing the limits of bikini, I would like that to look a little bit softer, a little bit of a softer look. Now, looking at that back pose from her last show at the Clash to this show, she does look a little bit softer. I do like the look. Her hair is a little bit shorter. It's not completely on her suit anymore. I do think the hair still needs to be maybe 2 inches taller than that, or shorter than that, I should say. The hair is off her shoulders, unlike the last show, so she's controlling her hair a little better, showing those beautiful shoulders and that V-taper from the backside. Looking at the tie-in, the glute tie-in here, it is still a very crispy tie-in. It is not fully etched like it was previously. Previously it was still barely not etched. This is a little bit better. This is a little bit closer. I think that this would be more comparable if she gets into the Olympia level, is going up against a Laura Lee and Ashley, where they're going to have full tie-ins without etched tie-ins. A Jennifer, full tie-ins without etched tie-ins. I think this is going to be more comparable, but even then, maybe just a hair less etching to it. I think it's a tiny bit of more softness in here, and she's going to be great. Her hamstrings are dead on, and these are the little things I think she needs to actually be competitive at the Olympia. So moving the hand placement down, cutting the hair, all these little things make big differences. But overall look for this one, I'm actually really happy with her overall look. The issue that she has is she's very muscular. She's very dense. This look is a lot better than the Clash, but you have to be careful when you're in bikini to not go as far in the muscle as to get an X frame. Okay, that's where things change from bikini. There's like a bikini taper and a bikini curve versus an X frame. X frame goes into, a figure competitor where it's a big X frame, right? So she's bordering on that. Her shoulders are really, really full. Her lats are really full. So it's just right at the border. She's kind of like that max bikini competitor. But as of right now, I think it's really good. Obviously, it was good enough for a win. Will it be enough to move her into a top 10 at the Olympia? I think she's going to have to work on those things to do that. Soften her look just a hair to be more comparable to the more softer bikini competitors, not in body fat, but in how they present as a flowing, soft fitness model bikini competitor without that rigid X frame and that hard posing. I think that's all these little tips are going to be helpful for her to get to that next level. Let's see if she takes them up. Next up, we have Ellie Fernandez winning in Toronto. Looking absolutely amazing. Now, here's a little known fact that came to me from the Bikini Talk group. And Ellie Fernandez is actually, this is the 7th time she's qualified for the Olympia. So fact check me if I'm wrong. Is Ellie Fernandez the only bikini competitor to ever qualify for the Olympia 7 times in a row without winning the Olympia? I think that is actually, I think she holds a record. I was trying to think of anyone else that could have been. Maybe there's someone I'm missing. But I think that she's the only one to do it 7 times in a row. I don't know if that's a pretty uncommon feat. I don't know if that's been done in any other division either. 7 years in a row. Obviously, if you win the Olympia, you're qualified every single year for life. But someone who hasn't won the Olympia, is there anyone else who's done it? Please put it in the comments below if you know of anyone I'm missing. I was trying to think of anyone, and I just couldn't figure it out. So if that is true, which I think it is, congrats to you, Ellie. What a warrior she is. Now, is this Ellie's best look she's ever had? No, it's not her best look she's ever had. I don't think she's going to be bringing a package like this to the Olympia. But looking at the show list, she did go on the show list late. It looked like the show list that was in Toronto wasn't a deep show list. Looks like she jumped in last minute. And a competitor at her level who was 90% there can jump into a show like that, qualify for the Olympia, and put in that hard work the rest of the year and create a real good showing come Olympia. That is part of the strategic part that goes into competing. And if you're a bikini competitor on a small show list, and you're a pro, just know when a small show list comes out without any huge names, you're probably going to get a couple girls that jump in there on that show list. And that's just part of the game. That's how it is. So I'm glad. I always want the top competitors at the Olympia. I don't want 50 girls who shouldn't have won a show because there was only 6 girls at that show and they just had to beat 5 girls that have never been to the Olympia type of thing. Like, the Olympia should be hard to get to. It is our Super Bowl. It should be hard. You should run into talent that jumps into shows. I like the Olympia blockers. I like the Olympia block team that gets into these shows and makes it difficult for people to get in. We've had some good ones this year. Had Amy be doing a bunch of shows. Ashley's going to be doing a bunch of shows. The year before that, we had Jourdain doing a bunch of shows. Ashlyn doing a bunch of shows. So all these Olympia blockers help make it more difficult and more prestigious to get to the Olympia. And I think that's absolutely how it should be. I'll put Ellie in that group right now because that show list going into it just wasn't that deep, and she made it all of a sudden a real show, right? So looking at her overall look, though, what does Ellie need to do? 7 times the Olympia. What does she need to do to get to the next level, though? How are we going to get her to move up the ranks? Obviously, amazing structure, amazing look, amazing talent, amazing effort. She's done all that. She's hit all the boxes. She's a cream of the crop. We already know that. She holds records, it looks like, in getting to the Olympia. But what about being at the Olympia, right? So a couple of things that she needs. One, she does need more overall fullness to this outer edge of the glute here, right? You could see that there's good hip width. The hip width isn't bad at all, but you could see that it's just not full through this area here. She needs to have that pop if she's going to be competing against girls like Ashley and Jennifer and Laura Lee who have that full, complete glute, that full roundness of that glute medius up top here. The tie-ins need to be not necessarily deeper and more conditioned, but she needs to have more of them. There needs to be more thickness to that overall glute tie-in. She can get this glute tie-in to build out just a little bit more, to fill out that area a tiny bit more. And so it's mostly in the glutes from the backside. Also, you can see all this detail here on that hamstring. You see all that detail there on the hamstring? There's a lot of separation on those hamstrings. That's not going to work at the upper levels when you're talking about competing against a Laura Lee and an Ashley or whoever that have a real round, real full hamstring without that separation. So she needs more overall size to fill out that area, to thicken up that tie-in without getting it any deeper in the cuts, but to thicken it up. Her shoulders are really, really good, but from the back, yeah, she could have a little bit more in the rear delt, a little bit more taper in that back, just a tiny bit. And I think there's enough time for her to get to the Olympia and have that if she puts in that work now and starts really focusing on her Olympia level look. So from the front, there's not a whole bunch she needs. Shoulders look actually pretty good from the front. Great lats from the front. Her core is really, really good here. I don't think she needs to be any more conditioned in that core. I would like to see just a tiniest bit more in the abs, just a kiss more of muscle in that abs. But the conditioning of the legs is there. It's not overly dense. You're not seeing that grain to it. She's pushing the limits for her quads in bikini. The front pose is great. I do think that this arm is a little far out, but just a little thing, bring her arm down a little bit here. And this is a good example too of that more feminine, more dainty posing. Look at how dainty and how feminine that posing versus like a really strong pose where you have that fist. And I think if you switched Krista Bellina's pose with Ellie's pose, now Krista Bellina, Ellie could probably do better with a stronger pose and a higher arm, right? Because it's going to make her shoulders look bigger. Krista Bellina has all the shoulders in the world, maybe would look better with a more dainty pose, right? So it's based on the structure of the girl and how you're going to present her. And I think that if those two swapped, it would actually make more sense than it being, flipped. But obviously this pose is actually really good for her. I think she could just use a little bit more overall shoulder width to really sell this package, but it's a really good look. Obviously, it's getting the Olympia 7 times in a row. And next up, defending her Nevada State Championship of last year, Ashley Cotwalser winning her 38th, yes, you're hearing that right, 38th pro win. She is currently the most winning IFBB Bikini Pro and currently the most winning pro in the history of the sport. So every time she wins, she sets that record one notch higher. Will anyone ever be able to catch that record? I don't know. It's going to be pretty tough. It's going to be a pretty tough record to beat, and she's nowhere near being close to finishing that record off. So can Ashley get to 40 this year? Is that possible for her to get to 40 this year? I think so. She's going into the Mile High next weekend. What does Ashley need to do to move from number 3 in the world to number 1 in the world? But we'll say 2 years in a row, she's been the number 1 American in pro bikini. So that's pretty cool. So what does she need to do to get to her 4th Olympia crown? It would be pretty cool because this would be the 10-year anniversary of her first Olympia win. So kind of cool. And it is absolutely entirely possible for her to do that again this year. So let's go ahead and look at her overall physique. So overall physique, obviously, now this is what we talk about when we talk about that bikini taper and those bikini curves versus an X frame. Ashley doesn't have that big, powerful X frame. She's never going to have that big, powerful X frame. That is not her structure. She's more of a petite structure, but she's very round, very bubbly. She has kind of that. She's kind of like the Flex Wheeler of bikini, where she's really round and looks really full. Even when she's flat, she still has that roundness to her, but her degree of fullness will vary. And for her, it's just a matter of finding that perfect conditioning fullness ratio. They do like Ashley leaner. That's just part of the game. They like her a little bit leaner. And when they like someone a little bit leaner and they like someone else a little bit softer, well, that person who's a little bit softer is naturally going to be more full than Ashley, right? So if Ashley's already starting off with a petite structure and a petite frame, and someone else is starting off with a medium structure and medium build, right? And they're allowed to be a little bit softer, there's no way Ashley's ever going to be as big as that person if they're allowed to be softer. Now, if they're allowed to be the same conditioning and they like them both just as lean, advantage might go to Ashley in that scenario because she's got that rounder without that density look to her. So that's a good thing about Ashley. You see, everything flows really nicely. There's no crazy density. Look at her hamstrings. She's known for her hamstrings and her glutes. Her backside pose, I don't think there's anyone that touches her backside pose in the IFBB. She's known from the back, just really, really hard to beat because she has these really full, really round, really wide hamstrings. You see that we talked about Ellie in the last pose, how her hamstrings were a little bit thinner. They were like taking up maybe 70% of the width that Ashley's are. Ashley's hamstring is really round and bubbly. It actually takes up a majority of the back of the leg. And because of that, she gets these really nice hamstrings, a really nice roundness to them without having any separation lines in them. She has the tie-in that's fully there, but it's not etched in there, right? So that's the thing about Ashley. We don't bring it in super, super tight where you're getting that etched tie-in, but it's full, complete tie-in without being etched in, and that's the look that we're talking about. Now, Ashley, again, we're talking about overall fullness and muscle. Can she be fuller here? Yes. She was a little bit fuller on Friday than she was on Saturday. So for us, it's about getting her perfect balance of fullness and conditioning. Her conditioning is better on Saturday on this show, but her fullness was better on Friday. How can we merge the two without losing her lines? Will we be able to do it by the Olympia? That's going to be the thing. It's always about pushing and pulling her about 5%. When we talk about consistency, Ashley is the most consistent. You'll see competitors all over the range here. But Ashley, she's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. In those positions, you don't see her out of the top 3. If she's off, she's only a little bit off. So for her, it's just, can we fine tune it come Olympia time? Can we bring that perfect package of fullness and conditioning at the same time? The judges said she doesn't need much overall size anymore. They said she's pretty much done what she needs to do in terms of the size game. They said, if anything, maybe a tiny bit more in the shoulders, but honestly, she's done the work. So we're getting nothing but positive feedback from them at this point, saying, you know what, you have exactly what we're looking for in bikini. You have the curves that we want in bikini. You have the taper that we want in bikini without being the X frame. Your conditioning is where it's at. It's right at that limit of where it's where it needs to be without being too much. The fullness is there. Yeah, there's girls that are fuller. There's girls that are wider, but you pretty much have done everything you can with your physique. If you can just nail everything come Olympia time, you're going to have a real shot. So that's a real awesome thing to hear from the judges, and I'm really excited for this Olympia. Hopefully we can nail it. You know, you're never going to be able to know fully for sure how the body's going to work, but I can tell you this, she's going to give everything she can for it, and I think there's actually a real shot for her, which would be really exciting to see. Now let's get into some of the stories of the weekend. So one of the crazy things I want to point out is bikini and how volatile bikini is. There's some huge swings in bikini. Very few people are as consistent as an Ashley Kaltwasser, as we talked about, right? And I'm not jumping on the Ashley train. Obviously, everyone knows my relationship with Ashley, but that's just the truth of the matter. She's extremely consistent. She's finishing 1 and 2, 3 here and there, all throughout the year, and competing as often as she does. It's a pretty rare thing in bikini. So one of the reasons I pointed that out is because Rihanna beat Jessica just a few weeks earlier, and Jessica got 6th place. So Jessica was 6th, and then actually Jessica beat Rihanna just a couple weeks later. Actually, I think it was the next week later. I think it was 1 week later. So that's how volatile the swings are. Jessica got 2nd, Rihanna got 3rd. And on top of that, Savannah, who recently won a show, came in as 9th, right? So that's the swings in bikini. Not everyone can compete all the time like Ashley and still maintain mostly the same physique. Now, I wanted to go into Rihanna's physique and go kind of back on some of the comments that I made earlier. Now, one, I do think her frame is one of the best in bikini. I don't think it is the best in bikini, but I think it's one of the best in bikini. It's a really good, really round frame. Her muscles are really round. Her frame is really good. She has a really good curve to her frame. If she was more muscular, I think she would fall into that X frame category that you don't want to be in. But because she's not very petite, she can pull it off. Kind of like Issa. Issa's very kind of really wide up top with a tiny waistline. Kind of pushes that, would be in that X frame if she had more overall size. But because she doesn't have that size, you can't really put her in that X frame category. And Rihanna's kind of the same thing. Now, here's the thing. The other day when I talked about Rihanna versus Amy and it being like a perfect score with Amy versus Rihanna, and I was like, I don't know if the judges got that one right. You know, if you'd go Amy versus Rihanna, I would probably have had Rihanna because Rihanna fits bikini as how it's laid out in the rules, and this is what bikini should be. And Amy, I think, pushes the muscle a little bit too much. But when I saw Rihanna in person, I do think the judges got it right. In person, I would have had Amy as well. I'm flipping my vote on that one, just from the in person. Now, I do still think that Amy has too much density to her quads and too much size to her quads for bikini, but she is really round and more short, and I think that makes it look like it's more than it actually is. But there's still some density there I would say could knock her down, but not as much as knocking down Rihanna when I saw her in person. She looks really muscular and pushing the limit of muscle even for her little frame in pictures, but in person I saw her and I was like, you know what, she still needs more size. And I'm the guy that's going to say she needs more size a lot less than the other one. But when I'm saying it, I'm seeing her arms. She needs more arm size. Her arms are a little small. Is it that she's just a little bit flattened out and a little stringy from competing week to week to week, and she's an ectomorph, and it hits ectomorphs harder than others? That's entirely possible. But looking at the option between her and Amy, do I go with the person who's a little bit too muscular, or do I person that's far under on the arms and on the shoulder actual muscle than the competitors all around her? I'm probably going to err on the side of a little bit more muscle. Maybe there was a better pick between both of them, but when you're comparing those two, I would actually go in and go on vote for Amy on that one too. So I'm going to go back on my vote on that, which is something I rarely do, but I want to give Amy credit where it's due. She's always brought up in these videos because she's always active, right? Probably won't be brought up as much until we get to the Olympia, because I don't think she's active until the Olympia now, but she deserves that credit. She deserves that correction. And I always want to be unbiased, give my honest opinion. Seeing her in person, I think Rihanna needs a little bit more muscle, which is something you're not going to hear from me too often, but her lines are beautiful. I think that we're going to see Rihanna's peak probably next year. She's put on a lot of muscle this year. I think we'll see her peak next year. I think her threat to the Olympia will be next year. She needs a little bit more size still after seeing her in person. And I think that she's going to be a real threat. I honestly think that she has a chance at winning the Olympia within the next maybe 3 years. But right now, a little bit too small still, and I think next year will be her year to really shine. Now, I briefly wanted to bring up Savannah just based on bikini in general. Not so much a Savannah thing, but just bikini in general. You know, you're going to see huge swings in bikini. And we talk about, you know, being mentally tough in bikini. It's such a subjective sport. It's such a hard sport. It's hard to consistently hit it. And you're going to have huge swings, you know. And Savannah just came off of a win, and then she goes right to 9th place at her next show. You know, when I saw Savannah in the morning, I even talked to her. Savannah's cool. She's one of my buddies. I always mess with her, calling her a thorn in my sock. But and I thought going into this show, I said it's going to be Ashley and Rihanna or Ashley and Savannah if they go for more muscle, right? So when I'm preparing an athlete like Ashley, who's potentially winning, you know, first or second and third, I'm kind of looking at, okay, what do we got to look like based on who's around us? You know, if everyone's super, super shredded, we'll bring her in a little bit tighter. If everyone's super, super full and they outsize her, we'll bring her in a little bit fuller, right? Things like that. You got to think about those things and have a good stage IQ, especially when you're coaching. You got to look at who's the likely candidates that we're going to be going against. What do they bring to the table that we're strong in, that we're weak in? How do we adjust accordingly for the competition that day? You know, so you'll see variances. Sometimes I miss, sometimes I'm going to miss. Sometimes, you know, if Ashley competes 14 times a year or whatever, sometimes she's just going to be a little off. There's that too. But looking at Savannah in this show, you know, I saw her in the front and I was like, you know what? She looks really good. I'm surprised that she got a second call out. How did that happen? You know, how did she get pushed into that second call out? And so how it went is there was a first call out with like 8 girls, and I think she was in that first one, but then they let 4 girls go, and then they added more girls to the second call out. So it was like a 1.5 call out type of thing, and then she got moved out of that a little bit farther right, ended up in 9th place, if I remember it correctly. Now, with her overall front look, I wasn't really paying, you know, too much attention because I was looking at the battle between first, second, third, and fourth and kind of trying to figure out what was going on there. And then I didn't really look at her too much in the second call out because Elizabeth got into the second call. I was kind of helping Elizabeth with positioning her and whatnot. And so I didn't get to see her too much. So I talked to her after the show, after judging, and I was like, and it's really weird. I don't know what happened because you looked awesome from the front. And it's one of my favorite looks that she had from the front. But then I saw her at the night show and I paid a lot of attention and I was like, oh, okay, it's the back. It was lacking the pop, you know, and that's just really what it was. She's done a couple shows. Not everyone holds up as well. And she just didn't have the pop. And then when I looked at it again, her flow is really, really good here. You know, I have said that Savannah comes in a little bit too muscular at times, like a little bit too dense and too hard. I've only seen it once, though. I will say that. I've only seen it one time, and that was at USA's. And she won Miss USA. So joke's on me because she beat my girl out. And that's where she got the nickname, the thorn in my sock, because she beat me for that USA title that I just can't seem to win. I've been close so many damn times, and I just can't get it. But I thought her shoulders were a little bit much there. And since then, they've been more tapered down. The balance has been a lot better. And her balance looks really, really good from the front, but her pop just wasn't there this time, you know? I've seen her twice now where this has happened. Actually, the show she won, in the morning, she was a little bit flat. But at night show, she really came alive. So I think she's someone that just burns through carbs and is going to have huge fluctuations and huge differences in how she looks when she's fully full and when she's, she's a little bit flat. But in a scenario like that where your coach is going to be there at the Olympia and you're going to have a lot of check-ins and whatnot, she's going to be bringing 100% pack to the Olympia. This could also be just because she can't sustain it for a long period of time. Not everyone's body is designed for that. It could also just be that, hey, she was flat. Hey, who knows? Maybe she was sick a week before. You never know. But the purpose of this, of bringing her up into this one, is that you got to be tough in bikini. You're going to be, sometimes you're going to be the hammer and sometimes you're going to be the nail. And that's just the way it is in bikini. And you can't let those things get to your head. And it's really tough to not let them get to your head. But she's mentally tough. I saw her after. We actually ended up at the same restaurant after. I was talking to her and her dad and whatnot. And she was like having a good old time. She was mentally tough. I could tell she's tough and she's going to be able to just move this past her. I see some girls, their whole world has ended because they got 9th after they just won. And I'm like, hey, you just won last week. Like, you're fine. It's going to happen. But she was like, whatever. I'll just move on next, make some improvement. So hats off to her for being a warrior. And I do expect her to still be a real threat at the Olympia here. And next up, also at Nevada State, was Valeria. Valeria, I was really happy to see in person. I could do this whole review basically on Nevada State. How deep was that show? What a crazy show that was. There were 6 Olympians there at just a regular Nevada State show. Hey, girls, just some advice for you. If you're a pro bikini, you might want to stay out of Nevada if you're going there for your Olympia qualification. It is so deep out here. These girls defend their title. Amy competes often out here, one of the powerhouses in the IFBB. Ashley, you can pretty much count on being at most Nevada pro shows. Jennifer Dory lives here, right? So who knows if she's just going to jump on the stage. If you're trying to get your Olympia qualification, it's a pretty tough place to do it. The women defend their city. So thank you, Las Vegans, Las Vegan girls, Las Vegan girls, Las Veganites, Las Vegans, Vegan, Las Vegan, Las Vegas. Congrats, Las Vegans. Thank you, Las Vegans. Thank you, Las Vegas. Okay, thank you, Las Vegas. So for defending your hometown. Now, looking at Valeria, I was really excited to see her in person. I wanted to see if she was I wanted to see if she was amazing in person as I've seen from the pictures online. And she did not disappoint. Really, really good physique. It's a year of the tall girls. For all of you girls who are out there who's like, oh, it's not a tall girl sport. You know, you could see Kimber was moving up the ranks this year. And the only reason she's not competing right now, Kimber, is because I pulled her off. I think she probably could have got an Olympia spot this year. But I don't think, again, as we talked about earlier, I want her to be competitive there. So I think next year is going to be her year to really be, to go jump in Olympia with a little bit more density. But Valeria, I think she's taller than Kimber unless, I'm 5'9". She towered over me. So year of the tall girls, tall girls can actually be a real threat in bikini. And I think Valeria is inches away from winning. I mean, the structure on her is absolutely crazy. Again, bikini, pretty curves, not an X frame. She's definitely doing it. Now, the problem with Valeria is her overall conditioning. These pictures don't show it as much. Everyone looks a little softer in these pictures, I will say. She is shredded. Her back pose was so detailed. Her hamstring, this is not showing the way that it really showed under the lights. She even had cross-striated quads here, like cross-striation. So you have striations in your quad. So the striations in your quad is this line you see down here, the up and down line. So you have the up and down lines. Those are striations. When you see a bodybuilder's quad that goes vertically, that is the striations. Cross striations or feathering of the quads is when you see your quads have lines horizontally like that, the actual grain and groove in the muscle. When she hit that front pose, you could see cross striations in that quad. Now, she's got a very soft bikini look to her where the muscle's very pretty. She's got that very, very pretty muscle and where it's not looking overly dense. But if you bring anyone in that tight, they're going to look a little overly dense. Big miss on her part. Honestly, I know you're going to think this is crazy to say. And honestly, for me, it's not even crazy. It's obvious. I think her competing against Ashley in this show, being held head to head, would have been extremely likely, actually probable, had she brought the right conditioning. I think that if her conditioning was better, her posing was better, and everything was just more, more for the American market, because this is her first time kind of coming to the American market and competing. She's learning a lot with this. I think if she hit her poses better, she probably would have been 1 and 2 with Ashley, and it would have been a real tough battle. It would have been one of those ones where I'm like, there's so many pluses and minuses on each of them. Like, I wouldn't even be mad if the scenario went and like where Ashley got second next to her or something like that. Because it could be one of those ones where it's like so different that you could be like, okay, I guess I could see it. But she's not there yet. I think she's got a little ways to go on her overall posing, on nailing her conditioning, on laying her overall flow. And then she could be a real threat to some of these top competitors. But if she nails all this by the Olympia, very few are structurally capable of beating her or hanging with her. Her muscles are so pretty, and the difference is like just the density of the muscle isn't there. There's no density. It's just round and full. Her skin has a beautiful complexion to it. Great skin tone. Skin texture is great. People think, oh, these coaches, they talk about I've heard it before where people say the skin thickness, that's like a made-up thing, and the coaches just say that because their athletes aren't in condition. Skin texture is a real thing, and her skin texture, you can see it here. It just glows, and it shines and shimmers really well. It's kind of like Phil Heath. He looked like a trophy when he was competing. When he was posing, it just looked like a trophy, right? It didn't make sense how his skin texture looked so good. She's got the same type of thing. So really, really a ton of potential. Pay attention to her. It's just these little things. The right fullness for her, the right posing for her, And then she's there and she's knocking it out of the park. She's going to be winning a lot of shows in the American market. After seeing her in person, I was super impressed. But she makes a lot of mistakes. It's going to take getting past those mistakes for her to get to the next level. And she's going to have to really figure them out come Olympia time, because you kind of want to set the tone in the American market. I would like to see her compete 3 or 4 more times, work with the right people to make sure that she's bringing the right fullness, she's proposing the right way, and then she could present and probably win. If she does 4 shows, she could probably win 2 or 3 of them the rest of this year, given the right scenario. So I would like to see that before she goes to the Olympia, but I don't think we're going to. I think that she's heading back home soon. We talked about Laura a little bit earlier this year about being one of the potential top athletes coming into the year that are going to be kind of a breakout star. Is she doing enough to do that? So let's go ahead and look at Laura and how she did at Nevada State. So first off, obviously, the thing about Laura, and I was looking at her pictures earlier this year on Instagram, and I was kind of pulling them up. I'm like, this girl's got a real talent. Structurally, who can hang with this girl? Amazing, amazing structure. And that's the thing. That still holds true. One of the best structures that I've seen in bikini in terms of the structure. So I'm going to go into that stuff first. But she's got a very petite structure. You can see here her shoulders are still a little bit back. When someone's that small, she needs to really turn those shoulders over, like really turn them over and face them front on. She was doing it in certain poses, but she would lose it here and there, be a little bit smaller, shrink away, and then she would be wide at the show and really show her width. And she needs to fully show her width because she is so petite and so small at the show. Now, the thing with her is when we talk about structural potential, her structural potential is limitless. It is crazy, crazy high. Here's the thing. I like to use this example as like, obviously I like boxing. I like Mike Tyson and whatnot. I always use these examples. Like every coach that's ever taught boxing was like just waiting for a Mike Tyson to walk into their gym. Like they just needed the clay to mold them, right? She is that girl. She has the structure. You have the Mike Tyson. But you need to maximize the Mike Tyson, right? You can't just have Mike Tyson. He's going to be the same with every single person, right? You need to maximize the Mike Tyson. You need to take all their God-given attributes and maximize them. And if you did that for her, I think that she could be a real, real threat. But she can't show up in this conditioning. This is subpar conditioning for her. She's flat. She's stringy. She's overly conditioned. She's not anywhere near maximized of her potential. And to give you these pictures here, you could see how flat her shoulders are, how stringy her arms are, how stringy her legs are. Everything's just really off. I mean, this is when you're this lean and this condition and this flat and this stringy, you're like weeks away from correcting it. It's not days away from correcting it. And this is one of those ones that you could have picked up on a little bit earlier and corrected. And I think there's just some disconnection she has with the overall conditioning requirements in pro level bikini versus what she sees as lean, right? So, and I'm going to pull up a picture here. This is her 6 days out of her last show. And she's posting it on Instagram. It's like a movie or a reel saying I'm 6 days out, and she's showing like, hey, look at how conditioned I am, right? Every coach would see this pretty much on the planet and be like, hey, you're way too lean. I mean, we have, are these even quad striations at this point? Are we looking at tendons at this point, right? It's so over the top lean that no one shows up like this in bikini. This would be lean for figure, right? So this would be lean for women's physique, which is like shredded to the bone lean, right? This is anatomy chart lean, and that's, I think, where her big potential comes through is when she nails her conditioning, when she nails her muscle tone and fullness. I think she's going to need a little bit more muscle still to maximize her structure. So my advice to her would be, and I think she's a super sweet girl. There's no bash on her whatsoever. She's a Las Vegas person too. My advice to her would be, maybe take some time off. I would probably take a full year off for her, have her grow, have her fill out, and honestly see what she looks like throughout that process of gaining a little bit of body fat, because honestly, she's a few pounds away from in body fat to be competitive at the show. She would actually need to gain a few pounds of body fat to be competitive at this show. So it's not just the stringiness and being flat. She would actually need more muscle on top of that. But again, structurally, tie-in wise, all that muscle like that, it looks really pretty when it's filled out, when it's pumped. The potential of her is pretty limitless. I don't know. I've never seen someone in all my years, I've never seen someone who was structurally this good that kept missing so far off on their conditioning, like so far off on their show presentation where, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, it looks like her potential would be really good, like really extreme if she filled out based on what I'm seeing structurally. Like the piece of clay that she is could be molded to such an art that I think it would be hard to deal with for a lot of people. Because how do you can't outstructure a girl. That's the thing. You can out-muscle a girl. You can out-pose a girl. You can have all these, but you can't outstructure them. Like once you have that part of it, once the bones are there, it's like, you know, what are you going to do against her, right? It's kind of like when you run into Issa, it's like you're not going to out-waist her. She's going to have the smallest waistline. So let's not even try to compete against that. She's going to have the smallest waist. She wins there. She's going to have a wide clavicle base. She wins there, right? So where else do you beat her type of thing? You kind of like look for other options. With her, it's going to be that way. But for her right now, she's beating herself. You know, she's beating herself and until she really fills out her frame. But I could see her just crushing it. And that's the sad part about it. You know, I know she can really just crush shows if she were to have a little bit more muscle, a little bit more fullness, didn't show up stringy like that. I think that she could crush shows. I think it's going to be next year, though. I think she's going to need to lift really hard. She's going to have to get a real good mindset on what bikini conditioning actually is and maybe what either she thinks it is or whoever she's working with thinks it is. But right now, she's just missing, and man, she could be so damn good. I still stick to my word. One of the greatest potential physique that are out there. She might have structurally the best bone structure in bikini right now. Like structurally, it's crazy what we're looking at here. I don't think people really realize that, like what we're looking at. Look at the hip width setting. Look at the clavicle width. Look at the petite bone structures, but the rounder muscle bellies. Look at the tie-ins. I mean, it's pretty muscle, even though it's shredded muscle, right? There's a lot going on there. So I hope that she hits it. I would love to see her like really shine and really just add that to her physique. So yeah, with that, I'm just going to wish her a lot of luck. Hope to see her competing a little fuller, a little better. Maybe she'll do a few more shows this year, and she just needs to gain body fat. So there's no reason she can't keep competing this year while she's gaining body fat. That's going to be easy. She'll be fuller just gaining body fat going to the next show if she wanted to, because there's no reason to pull back if you're going to be gaining into the next shows. But yeah, I hope maybe she'll do a couple more shows this year, but I think next year, maybe even the year after, with how much muscle she needs to really shine. But remember her name. I think that she's going to be someone to really have to deal with in the future. Next up, we have Maya Estabi, also another person competing at the Nevada State. Again, the Nevada State is just a crazy show this year. Crazy, crazy show. Reason I'm bringing Maya up is because she's been gone for a little while. She's making her, I guess, 2023 debut. But also it's a good story because I wanted to give her props for her amazing transformation that she's had going into this show. And we just don't see too many high-level bikini transformations at like a pro level, right? I think a lot of the women who maybe gain a little bit of body fat just don't want to show their before pictures of it. But we're all human. It happens to everyone. You know, when I was competing, I've done it twice myself where I blew up a little bit too much in the off season. You know, I'm not saying she actually doesn't look that bad in her off season, but look at this transformation. And I think that it's good for everyone to see this where, you know, she's pretty much just looks like a regular girl, very fit, but regular girl in terms of her body fat, you know, nothing crazy. But look at this transformation into here. So I just wanted to give her props because that is awesome. I think it's great that she's showing that too, because everyone goes through this at least once. I don't know really any high-level bikini competitors who don't have a little bit more of a relaxed off-season here and there where they gain a little bit of body fat. You know, some are, obviously, I'm one who always preaches, hey, stay lean, stay lean. But, you know, it happens. People do gain a little bit. I don't think this is bad by any means, though. But it's just awesome to see a high-level competitor showing their transformation into a show. And I thought, you know, that's a really good story to see because I think a lot of people need to see that. A lot of people going through their transformation need to see, hey, I can do this too. Not pros aren't perfect and they're not staying shredded all year long. They're only showing you pictures of them staying shredded all year long. But believe me, most of them are not staying shredded all year long. They're just taking a lot of pictures around that shredded time and posting them throughout the year. So I was really happy to see her doing that and being open with her audience. I think that's great. But let's go ahead and go into her overall physique as well. So what does Maya need to do this year to win? Let's go ahead and take a look at her physique. So first off, she has a really good shoulder width. She's got great V taper. Her conditioning is really good. Shoulder width, again, is great. Her posing is good. You know, we talked about the hand being right above the strap here, or the connector, I should say, on the suit. She has her hand in a good position. She's someone with pretty big shoulders, so I wouldn't want her to have a high arm. That's going to make the shoulders look more shouldery, and I think that this is a perfect for how much muscle she has. Now, I do think the arms are becoming a little bit of a concern. They are pretty muscular. You're not seeing it in the back pose, but you are seeing it in the front pose. And when you have really big arms like that, sometimes it does take away from the shoulders. So I think that those can spare to lose, a half an inch on the arms. On the waistline from the back looks crazy small, and it's because of her shoulders being so wide and her V-taper being so good. But from the front, I do think she can actually profile her waistline just a tad more to make her lines a little bit better. I'm looking at her, and I think that the thing that's throwing off her balance is just how her core is a little bit more exposed, a little bit more turned towards the front. I think if she just pushed it back 1 inch and her waist was a little bit more profile, it would balance things out a lot better. And if she did that, I don't think there's a whole lot to change from the front. Her V-taper's there. Her shoulders look really good. Maybe even I would tuck her arm back just a hair so they don't see so much tricep. But really from the front, there's very little to change. Her conditioning is pushing the limits in that front pose. You're seeing the quad striations, but it's not grainy, right? You're not seeing the crazy graininess. Now, when we get to the back, it's a little bit different, and this is going to be a little bit harder thing to do for her. Looking at her hamstrings, they're really detailed, right? Her hamstrings are really detailed. You're seeing this one that has some separation. So the hamstrings and the adductors would fall into that kind of grainy category, right at that limit where they're starting to be a little bit grainy. But when you look at the tie-ins, she's got shorter tie-ins, and that's the thing. She's going to need to get those tie-ins to be a little bit more muscular to create a little bit more depth, and this is going to be a hard situation for her because in order for her to have tie-ins, she needs to push hard. In order for her to not have hamstring separation, she needs to push soft. So how do you do that? How do you balance out someone who needs more tie-ins and when they push so hard their hamstrings separate? Well, the way that you do that is you actually develop the glutes. You get the glutes a little bit bigger, but then you don't pose them as hard, so they look about the same as they are now without the hamstring detail being there. But she still needs more glute tie-in, right? She still needs more of that tie-in to show. So more overall size is going to be the answer for her on the glutes. A little bit more roundness in the upper outer edge of those glutes. A little bit more in the tie-in, so she doesn't need to push as hard. And then just, of course, not pushing so hard in those hamstrings would really elevate her in that back pose to the next level. From the front pose, there's not much to work on. She's pretty darn good. Everything else looks spot on. I don't think she really needs to change much. Her hair tone is good. There's some parts of it that are blending a little bit with her tan color, but it's not bad. I would probably darken it up a tiny bit if I'm really going after just nitpicking. But overall, great look. I'm really happy that she shows her befores. I'm happy that she shows the journey. I think that that's really awesome. I think more competitors need to do that, because perfection is very rare in this sport. You see that very, very rarely, even though I'm always preaching this is what you need to do or be as close to it as possible. The reality is most people aren't staying shredded all year, and I like that she posts pictures of that, and I think that's awesome for her. So hats off to her for that. And with that, very long Bikini TV, we're going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. TeamElitePhysique.com for worldwide online contest and transformation prep. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you later.